not continue. We have to start talking about. Now, if you want, you may turn off the camera. I don't mind. Okay, so you can turn off your camera. Okay. So today we're going to talk. We're going to go into deeper into command system. Deeper, and then the thing is, there are two ideological systems that manage, who are the ones who manage these command economies, que son el socialismo y el comunismo, and both are not the same. It sounds the same, look the same, but they are not the same thing. There are different things. Okay. Now, okay. Remember, in your notebook, you need to write the title of this session, Command Economies. Over here are the objectives. I'm not gonna read it. We don't have time, so we are against the clock. This is the vocabulary words that you need to add. This is vocabulary number 3. Okay, vocabulary number 3. Central plan, economy, social communism, or number 2. I don't remember, really. Okay, now let's begin down. Remember over here, the ones who controls the economic system is the government. That is the difference between market system, traditional system, and command system. Well, the other 2 systems, okay? Now the government controls everything. In a command economist, leader decides what should be produced and how it should be produced. They also decide for whom it should be produced. So they answer, the government answer the 3 questions of the economy, in which by determining who earns, another aspect, they tell who earns the highest wage and who the lowest. These leaders decide who has the money to buy available products, a system in which the society's leader, usually member of the central government, make all economic decisions, is called centrally planned economy. So these are synonyms, okay? Yes, now let's put an example and try to understand how is command economy, or like they say, central plan economy. What if the government went further? Suppose that bureaucrats in government office in Washington, D.C. had the power to decide which businesses could operate in your city. Further, these bureaucrats decide that not only what these businesses should produce, but also how much each business should produce each month. So you cannot sell only a certain amount of things or certain level of sales, okay? So you cannot sell more than you are supposed to commanded to do. That's what it means is. Finally, they also decide who could have jobs and set work hours. And they set work hour. Okay, you're gonna work only 10 hours, you're gonna work 12 hours or 6 hours or 5 hours, I don't know. They are the ones who decides. And pay scale, escala salarial, pay scale for workers. Okay, escala salarial. Government's control of this type are feature of a command or central plan economy. Okay, so these are the same. And they call that way. Now over here, there is a chart that compares different aspects like ownership, incentive, price, efficiency, quality. Examples of countries like Hong Kong, Singapore are example of free market, and over here, example of command economy, Soviet Union, and China. Now over here, this one is the main thing. The owner. Who's the owner? Over here in the command economy, industry owned and managed by the government. The government is the one who takes care of everything and command and make the decisions. It's the owner of everything. Okay, so that's the difference between this and this. Now there's another chart that talks about this one, the difference between socialism and communism. And who's the father of the communism? Is this guy, Mr. Marx, Karl Marx, padre del comunismo. Okay. In the 19th century, siglo XIX, German philosopher, historian, and economist was this guy. According to Marx's analysis, all of history is a struggle between classes. Dice que definitivamente hace una lucha de clases entre el que tiene más y el que tiene menos. Eso es lo que él concluye. In his own time, the struggle was between the owner of a great industry factories and the workers who exchanged their labor for wages. While the industrialists grew richer, the workers remained relatively poor. Acuérdense que en aquella época era la revolución industrial. En aquel entonces habían grandes empresas, se explotaba, trabajaba inclusive hasta niños. El horario de trabajo no era de 8 horas, sino de 12, cuidado de 14 horas, para tener un salario miserable. That's the word. Okay, miserable wages. Okay, so Marx predicted that in time the workers would overthrow, derrocarían this system and transfer ownership to the factories to public hands. Todo pasaría la factoría pasaría a mano del pueblo. Yeah. With the means of production owned by the government. The class struggle would be resolved and all citizens would share in the wealth. Everybody would share the same wealth. That's the idea according to Mr. Karl Marx. Pero definitivamente el comunismo puro no existe. Comunismo puro, donde todos ganan lo mismo, todo lo mismo, no hay. No existe, ni nunca va a existir. Okay, now over here there is a chart that compares the three systems, market system, socialism, and communism system. I'm gonna read it so you will have time to go and analyze it. Okay, now socialism and communism, over here we try to make the difference between socialism and communism. Now, the basic difference is that the communism is a stronger version of the socialism. Because in the socialism, the government owns the main factors of products in a country. But also he shared it with a private sector. So over here in the socialism, you could see some private McDonald's, things like that, okay? This kind of businesses. While in this communism, impossible. No. But the thing is that if you go to I don't know if in Cuba there's a McDonald's, I don't know. In Russia, I know there's McDonald's. So, as I said, a pure communism nowadays doesn't exist, guys. Okay. Everything has changed. Okay, now socialism, an economic system in which the government owns some or all of the factor of production. Remember the factor of production? And we started at the beginning of this, beginning of the first trimester, the factor of production, the capital, the resource, the entrepreneurs, remember, also the capital of production, okay? Developed from the idea of Marx, this guy, the father of communism. Now, communism, what is a communism? A more extreme form of socialism in which there is no private ownership of property and little or not political freedom throughout of Marx thinking. Essentially, it is authoritarian socialism. Se le puede llamar un socialismo autoritario. El comunismo es un socialismo autoritario. An authoritarian system requires absolute obedience to authorities. Now, the figure 2.1 lists the major characteristics of socialism. That's the chart over here, this one, 2.1. Okay, now there is another factor, another sector of the socialism, and they call it democratic socialism. It's established through the democratic political process rather than through the violence overthrown of the government. In this form of socialism, the government owns the basic industry, but our industries are privately owned. That's what I explained already. Okay, now let's stop right here, guys, because tomorrow or on Friday, we're going to complete this this PowerPoint. Now, what I want to play right now is a video that talks about the difference. No, not the difference. They explain deeper what is communism and what is socialism. Okay, guys, let me advance it over here, I think. Yes, here, yes.
Is an economic system that focuses on wealth distribution. It does have some aspects of a market economy, and it also has some of a command economy. If you don't know what I'm talking about there, click on the cards above. They'll show you those videos where I go into a market and a command economy. But socialism, the goal of it is to have wealth distribution. There'll be still some rich and there'll be some poor, but their goal is to have more people in the middle. Now, to do this, the government plays a role in the economy. This is different than capitalism, especially true capitalism. The government is involved here. And normally how the government distributes wealth is through taxes and then the redistribution of those taxes. And this could take shape in a variety of ways. Maybe in an income tax, it could be also a sales tax, it could be property taxes. All these different taxes would be used to be able to create then a distribution where money can be spread out throughout the people. A lot of times what occurs is the wealthier get taxed at a higher rate, while the people who have less get taxed at a lower rate. Now, this is one of the controversial things with socialism. Some people say that you shouldn't just tax the wealthy because they have done well in society. Others, though, point out that, well, maybe the wealthy have benefited more from society and they should give back to society. And then again, there's a counter argument saying, well, they could donate to charity and let them make their own decisions. And you shouldn't just punish people. And we could go back and forth on these things all day. And in class, I am sure we will be debating this. But socialism, the big focus of it is wealth distribution. If you remember anything from socialism, remember it's all about bridging the gap. You still will have some people who are wealthy and some people who are poor, but the goal is to have more people in the middle. Now, this can be a big advantage for a lot of people as there are safety nets and people will have protection. If you fail, the government's there to help you get back on your feet. On the other hand, though, too, the disadvantage, like we've already brought up, is that it could stifle innovation and creativity. The reason being that the government will step in when you become more successful and maybe take away more of your money. So hopefully you understand exactly what socialism is, how it impacts people in a society, and how it's even different than capitalism, the one that I've already referenced. Make sure to check out my other video.
Let's stop right there now. Let's move on to the communism. Now you see what's the difference. Now you got to compare.
Communism's goal is to create a classless society. Now, communism's been practiced throughout history and even today in a variety of ways, but true communism tries to get as close as possible to a classless society. If you're going to remember anything about communism, remember classless society. When Karl Marx created communism, he had this idea of capitalism being evil. He thought that capitalism would just drive revolution in society, that eventually people would get so upset with all of the losers and the few winners, and it would rise up and eventually take over the government and the businesses and the bourgeoisie. Now, Karl Marx thought this would lead to socialism, where we would see the bridged gap between the different classes, and then eventually another kind of revolution, and we would get to communism. Marx believed that for communism to work, we had to have a big government, at least at the start. The government would come in and collect all the resources, the means of production, and then distribute them evenly. Over time, then, the government's role would continuously shrink. As people became equal, there would no longer be this constant fighting over scarce resources. And when everyone had the same amount, there would be no more an incentive to continuously outdo people. And so then by having everyone be the same, we would have order, and the government would no longer be needed. And so in true communism, the government then would continue to shrink until eventually they go away. Because if the government stays, that is a class in its own, and then people in the government would be above others, and that would defeat the purpose of a classless society. Communism's great on paper. It sounds really good. Unfortunately, we haven't seen a lot of examples, at least on the large scale, throughout history of communism working. Normally what starts to happen is communism will be put in place, and then a dictator or a big government will take over, and they don't relinquish their power. That's kind of the human error. So the same with communism is great on paper, but bad in practice, partially because of human error. Now, in smaller societies, we've seen communism work. Just again, though, on the large scale, it doesn't work that much. People give up too much individual freedom, and corruption normally comes in. Hopefully you can understand exactly what communism is, how it's supposed to happen, and why it just doesn't necessarily work.
Okay, so this is everything what I got for you for today's class, guys. So now you have a little bit more knowledge about what's the difference between communism